for joining today's webinar on how leveraging MuleSoft drives digital innovation in airports. Before we get started, I just want to review a couple of housekeeping items first. So if you have any questions during the presentation at any point, please go ahead and drop them in the general chat or the Q&A. My colleague, Courtney Lavalier, will be either asking the questions to the panelists or holding them at the end for the Q&A at the end of the session. Probably goes without saying, but if you're not presenting, please go on mute throughout the duration of the presentation, or if you have a question to ask and you're called upon to unmute yourself. At the same time, we'd like to make this interactive, so please go ahead and turn on your webcams and join us, especially if you have any questions you want to ask, and it'll be a better session for everybody that way. So without further ado, let's turn it over. So today's presenters, obviously joining us today, we have Brandon Dean, President of AVIO Consulting, Mike Slack, Vice President of Sales and Marketing with AVIO Consulting, and myself, Anil Sridharan, Regional Vice President of Sales with MuleSoft, the Salesforce company. Before we dive into the presentation, just wanted to add a quick additional thank you to the team who helped us with the presentations today. Obviously, Brandon and Mike for being presenters, but also Mackenzie, Courtney, Ashley, Lily, and countless others who helped us prepare the content and the material and get our presenters ready for today's session. We're beyond thrilled to have AVIO Consulting here with us to take us through this reference story. AVIO, if we want to go to the next slide, sorry, Brandon, is a two-time winner of the prestigious Partner of the Year Award given out annually to partners who have invested in our technology to deliver exceptional business value to our clients. In recognition of the stellar work they do with our clients and their reputation as one of the premier MuleSoft implementation partners, AVIO was the first MuleSoft boutique nominated to receive funding from Salesforce Ventures after the acquisition of MuleSoft by Salesforce. Salesforce Ventures was looking to accelerate the growth of our partner organization to increase the adoption of MuleSoft in the market. And we're really thrilled and proud to have them on board here with us to present this wonderful story. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Brandon Dean. Welcome, President of AVIO Consulting.
Thanks, Anil. I really appreciate that. One thing I just want to kind of level set and kind of give an overview of who AVIO is for those of you who we haven't had the opportunity to work with before. And one of the key things about AVIO is that we're really all about helping our clients really become much more modern in their approach to application development and software engineering. A lot of it starts with a fantastic enterprise integration platform like MuleSoft, but there's lots of other ancillary things we think that need to happen in order to really make organizations take the most advantage of MuleSoft. So whether or not that's agile methodologies, if it's CI/CD, if it's automated testing, enterprise security, all those ancillary things that need to happen in order for organizations to really adopt and move into the modern development enterprise is really where AVIO stands out, and it really helps our clients. So I appreciate the intro there, Anil. And with that, we'll get a little bit into our operating philosophy, how that aligns with MuleSoft, and kind of how we structure ourselves as an organization in order to help our clients succeed. From a high-level standpoint, AVIO has a tremendous amount of MuleSoft experience. We've been a MuleSoft partner since 2016, which seems like forever ago, especially with as rapidly as Mule is growing, as much as has changed since then. We've done a tremendous number of projects during that time, small projects, large projects, anything from initial implementations all the way through full digital evolutions of organizations. All of our team are certified, at least MuleSoft developer certified, but a lot of them have additional certifications as well. So majority of our folks have 1, 2, sometimes 3 MuleSoft certifications. We've really put an emphasis on making sure that our team is certified, which means that they've got a really strong understanding and baseline of knowledge around MuleSoft. From an organizational standpoint, we span the Americas. So we've got our headquarters here in Dallas, Texas, which is where I'm based. But we've got our team throughout the United States. We've got team members in Mexico, which is where we do a majority of our managed services out of, but also Colombia, Brazil. We've got a substantial team in Argentina and Buenos Aires. So we really cover, from a nearshore standpoint, the breadth of the Americas. And so that's kind of how we continue to grow our team. One of the things that we like to try to advocate is to have a really influential and be really respected out in the marketplace. So as part of that, and part of that knowledge sharing, a lot of our folks are community ambassadors for MuleSoft, so they're out there answering questions in forums. They're MuleSoft mentors to folks, and we do a lot of MuleSoft meetups. We run the MuleSoft meetup in Dallas. We've got representatives that do the same thing in Delaware that do the virtual ones. We just ran one in Venezuela. We're doing one in Colombia. So we really try to, in every market that we're in, try to establish ourselves as some of the thought leaders and really help others evangelize how MuleSoft should be done. So that's one of the things we're really focusing on, is not so much the how to do something in Mule, because there's lots of folks who can explain and articulate how to do something in Mule, but really the important part is why it should be done that way, and what the benefits are of that, and really the long-term effects of making those decisions. And that kind of rolls into what we call the digital evolution life cycle. So a lot of folks have heard, right, obviously, digital transformation. I'm not a huge fan of that term, honestly, because to me, a transformation implies a distinct beginning and a discrete end. So a tadpole transforming into a frog, or a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly. At the end, it's complete. We don't see that being the case for what organizations are going through right now. They're continuously evolving. Look at what COVID did for a majority of organizations and having completely remote teams, right? Things have to evolve, and sometimes they evolve faster than others. And so what we have found is there's a life cycle that organizations go through. And some folks get immediate benefits, right? So as you go through and analyze what needs to happen to become more digital, you can orchestrate some of those processes and systems in order to do that. And then we can even optimize those using RPA and a number of different tools. You can optimize processes, optimize performance. But over time, that competitive advantage of doing that is going to start to decrease. Other organizations are going to catch up. Market situations are going to change. Customer demands are going to change. Experiences are going to change. And it's those organizations who can really cross that chasm and look at how can we innovate, and how can we really take what we have and create something completely new, completely different than what's in the market. Those are the folks who are really going to succeed in terms of digital evolution. And the nice part about this is, in order to really successfully innovate, you need leadership commitment, right? You have to ensure that the support is there for changing market direction. You have to ensure the funding is there in order to do those projects. And a lot of that starts to be incrementally built out as part of that analyze, orchestrate, and optimize. It's part of a larger vision. And in order to get to innovate, you use all those lessons that you learned along the way around agile methodologies, around reuse, around getting rid of tech debt. You can build for those short wins initially, but then build up into those medium-term objectives, and then all of that really comes together for those long-term objectives. And those organizations that can get to a mindset focused on implementing a digital way of working and having a priority on continuous improvement, we've seen them increase the probability of these large initiatives by 2 or 3 times, because they've really got a focus on making sure that those metrics are in place, that leadership is bought in, and that you've got the right utilization of people like AVIO who can ensure that you've got the best people in the spots to make your team as successful as possible. And that's kind of overwhelming, right? Thinking about things in that large, innovative way, and thinking oftentimes of where are we now and how difficult is it to get there? And we really see a phased approach to organizations who can be successful. And one is thinking big. Got to keep those large objectives in mind. But we don't like to boil the ocean with the initial project. Right? You have to start small and think of what are the stair steps to get there. And the nice thing about that is that's what helps build momentum. It helps decrease the resistance to change. It starts to build trust between organization departments within the organization. And by being able to act fast and come up with agile, quick wins that start to build toward that bigger goal, it aligns people in a much faster, much easier way than the traditional top-down mandates, right? This really helps out from a prove it, and people build trust, and there becomes this tidal wave of momentum and excitement over innovative type of opportunities that can happen within an organization. So with that, Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you to walk through some of the specific challenges that we've seen in the market.
Thanks, Brandon. Good afternoon, everyone. For me, it's the afternoon, so I'll say good afternoon. And I'll talk through a little bit of the context of integration in the airports and some of the challenges that folks face. So as we look at the next slide, really want to talk through initially two key points to consider when appreciating the context and challenge of integration in airports. And the first 2 parts of it is really navigating the public sector processes that are involved, and then 2, the uniquely complex mix of audiences that are at play. So on that first point, city county governments, which own and operate airports, have their own highly regulated and administrative processes which govern what software and hardware products are in play and what companies can work on those software and hardware products. Those specific cycles for when those new contracts or budgets can be approved make it challenging to approach innovation, because flexibility to adapt rapidly doesn't necessarily always exist. So while all companies struggle with legacy systems and technical debt, the reality is with public sector entities that when their approval processes, it oftentimes exacerbates that struggle. The second key challenge is really that complexity of the audiences that are involved. So, you know, the airport itself is a public sector entity. And if you think about all the different organizational types that you need to interact with in order to be successful, I mean, it's extraordinarily complex. There's other public sector entities like the TSA and FAA. There's customers of the airport like the airlines, which are operating there in the facility, and they in fact have their own customers and their own employees, who there's oftentimes data that is related to those folks that you as an airport might want. Larger airports are operating a mall within their facility, which is an entirely different and very vital business unit. So you need to manage relationships with myriad concessionaires and vendors who once again have their own customers. There are parking garage services, taxi and ride sharing services, and oftentimes nearby hotels and restaurants, which all rely on the successful functioning of the airport for their businesses to flourish. And just like any business, in order for the airport to flourish, you need data, accurate data, and accurate data that's oftentimes captured in systems that you might not own. It's a customer system or a customer's interaction on a website. That data might be data that you need. So you need a way to get access to that data, or that data might be in another government system. So the key thing here is that oftentimes the key business information you need about your customers and your customers' customers can be out of reach. If we take a look at the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about the technical implications that follow. You know, I've shared how airports sometimes struggle to adapt to new technology, which oftentimes leaves them with heavy on-premise solutions that are difficult to integrate with or maintain. But their customers or vendors, however, have their own custom applications oftentimes, or their own specific SaaS applications. And those applications can be anywhere on the digital evolution spectrum, from total digital novices or paper-based processes, all the way to bleeding edge new technology. The airport, the hub, not only needs to be able to span the chasm of their own siloed systems, but also somehow set the foundation for interactions and integrations with a wide variety of other software systems of varying cloud environments, varying customer experiences, and differing conventions around data. So imagine the challenge the airport system has if it needs for any given project information from the TSA, the FAA, Hertz, a local taxi service, Uber and Southwest Airlines. The reality is what we've seen is the legacy or traditional approach to integration can't support the needs of airports. If we take a look at the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about the legacy or de facto approach, which really has been point-to-point integrations with heavy custom coding or on-premise systems. And these approaches have provided a piecemeal solution that leaves many of the key audiences needing to be addressed out on the curb. And research in the space has shown that an average customer interaction can cross 35 different systems. And we know in the airport space, that number could be even significantly higher given their complexity. We've seen really explosive growth in the software systems at play, but on average, only about 1/3 of those systems are integrated. So most of the time, IT is spending their time on maintaining a constricted approach that's loaded with technical debt instead of innovating. And that's a major reason why integration can be the #1 reason why new digital evolution initiatives fail. So our client in this space spent over 2 years implementing a legacy platform and a legacy approach. And at the end, what they got was about 14 integrations that were difficult to maintain, difficult to add to, and didn't provide the flexibility and deployment models to meet all their customers. I'll share just a little bit here about the foundation that we helped to build. This is an illustrative example of the kinds of integrations that we helped them to build with MuleSoft. We were brought in to replace an Oracle SOA system that was implemented. It took them 26 months to do that. And what took them 26 months to implement, AVIO and MuleSoft together was able to replace and improve upon in 6 months, synchronizing the integration and streamlining data retrieval in the process. We implemented performance, stability, and maintenance improvements throughout this process. And just wanted to talk through kind of, with this illustrative example, some of the use cases that were covered as part of this implementation. There were checks and balances with financial institutions. We had the foundation set for monitoring people flow, which is an important security concern. We set the foundation for tracking flight tracker and data sync to and from the public websites, and then integrating with third-party systems so that you can get real-time alerts. Just some of the use cases that we were able to either support or help them deliver. So what are the results? So our client became 3 to 5 times more efficient building new integrations, and they actually reduced their annual spend by about $650,000 a year. And this kind of analysis can only happen when you consider the total cost of ownership for your software platform. That includes things like productivity gains, reduced infrastructure costs and time on maintenance activity, and licensing costs. And so that reduction of maintenance time and cost, not only does it save you money, but then it means your team isn't consumed with those maintenance tasks. And instead, you can focus on adding value to the business by innovating and building new integrations. And the foundation that they've set through this first phase is solid and strong. And that's how we typically think of foundations. Foundations are solid and strong. But a key element to this foundation is also flexibility. Flexibility to integrate with different technologies and with technologies that have various deployment models. For this particular customer, they weren't ready to go all in with the cloud. It wasn't something they had done. And so we needed to start with a hybrid deployment model for them, on-prem and in the cloud. So we were able to deploy it a hybrid way and actually help them transition from their legacy approach to their new approach. So what I've just shared really is about setting that foundation for innovation. It's the first 3 items on that digital evolution journey slide that Brandon shared. Analyze, optimize, and orchestrate. And as we get into the second half of the presentation, you'll hear a little bit about how once you've set that foundation, you are now able to innovate. Anil?
Thanks, Mike. Just a tremendous success story on taking AVIO's deep industry and product expertise to build out a robust solution for our client, leveraging the MuleSoft Anypoint platform, which is the world's #1 most trusted platform for integration and API management. Our platform approach to integration, coupled with expertise in services, provide clients with best practices to create reusable assets, which will allow them to unlock and unify data to deliver business results on average 3 times faster. As Mike shared, that's an average in their customer. They're able to deliver a performance improvement of 3 to 5x, which is just tremendous, right? So let's dive a little deeper into the methodology and understand why it's so effective for our clients and our partners. Please go to the next slide, please. So MuleSoft accelerates innovation at scale, right, for organizations by empowering IT and business users to go faster, providing a unified platform for integration, universal API management, automation, and API ecosystems. Our platform approach to integration allows clients to innovate across these 4 pillars: integrating applications and data in real time, creating, monitoring, and governing, securing APIs in a single unified offering, automating critical business processes by incorporating RPA, robotic process automation, and cultivating open ecosystems for customers, partners, and employees. Connect anything, change everything. Start fast, get faster over time. These are the 2 pillars of our guiding principles as we partner with customers and clients on their digital evolution. If you can go to the next slide, please. And good news, it's working, right? So as evidenced by a recent Gartner market share study, MuleSoft is the #1 full lifecycle API management by market share worldwide, and the gap is widening. Over the past 3 years, MuleSoft has grown its overall market share and increased our position and revenue more than any other full lifecycle API management vendor. Next slide, please. When Gartner published its report on enterprise integration platform as a service, the market share analysis, MuleSoft came in #2 in enterprise ITAM. But we remain the fastest growing vendor in the market. With the support of our clients, our partners, our ecosystem, we're poised to claim the top spot. So it's truly a great success story for everyone, and we thank you for your continued support. With that, I'll turn it back over to Brandon to take us home. Thank you.
Thanks, Anil. So I'd like to kind of package all this together, right? So that kind of see where does all this lead once you kind of have this strategy in place around innovating. You've got a platform like MuleSoft that enables you to rapidly roll out APIs and integrations. And then you've established this foundation that allows you to have best practices and reusable assets that is structured on a solid foundation of success. So how do we go to market, or how do we help clients do that? You'll see this word evolution. You'll hear that a lot with AVIO. We really firmly believe that is how organizations need to think about this kind of monumental change. And so our methodology is called the evolution methodology, and it's very much an agile Scrum-based methodology. The key component here is that it's not necessarily a have to do everything all at once, right? So we're constantly analyzing and discovering, building the backlog of things that need to be done, things that can be improved upon, and things that may need to be reworked and redone so that they can be reused. New opportunities may come up that had not been thought of previously. And so this is a continuous life cycle. And we try to do continuous releases. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to production all the time, but that does mean that both the business and IT organizations are seeing value being added. It may take multiple releases in order to have a full production release to have all that value rolled together. But we'd like to have constant feedback and constant communication, because oftentimes that gap between business and IT can be detrimental to initiatives like this. And really our approach really helps facilitate that tight conversation. So specifically at this client that we were at, one of their biggest problems was around point of sales and being able to integrate all the data that needs to come through the retail partners there on site at the airport. One of the big things is they couldn't make strategic decisions because the data oftentimes was either late, never showed up, it was inaccurate, there was an issue submitting the data. And of course, since this had been set up initially, the project team who had done that had then moved on to other projects. Some of them had left the firm or left our client. So there was no reuse. There was no documentation. Technical drift happens over time as well. So certain things were added on that didn't really meet the same design patterns and standards that were at the beginning. So it just made it really difficult to maintain. And at the end of the day, the airport there was revenue leakage primarily because of bad data. Whenever issues would happen, there was manual intervention, so it was very inefficient, very fragile. And then as airport vendors changed, as their modernization initiatives happened or new vendors came in, it was a complete redo every time. So it was very labor intensive to get new partners, new vendors on the platform. So what we were looking to do really is helping to automate that aggregation of data, the flow of that data, and provide multiple avenues in which that data could be provided. And a key component of this was trying to get real-time data from the point of sale concessionaires. That was going to enable them to have really actionable insights on a much more frequent basis of what needed to happen in terms of partnering with those vendors. So what we're really trying to do is have an API-led approach that provided multiple avenues for aggregating and getting that data. We wanted it to be a near real-time process, and we wanted to have consistent APIs that could accept files or structured JSON, and really wanted to have that foundation leverage that we had set up initially as part of that Oracle SolarSuite migration, leverage that foundation, leverage that infrastructure, leverage some of the best practices around exception handling and logging and some of the observability, and really be able to have all of that in place. So what it looked like, if anybody's worked with MuleSoft in the past, you've heard kind of this abstraction philosophy around APIs. So the red is really what we would call experience APIs from an API standpoint. Process APIs is what PAPI stands for, and then system APIs is what the bottom of the funnel there. So we had multiple different ways, and we'd have specific experience APIs if needed for each vendor. The nice thing was most vendors, once we had a consistent JSON API, they could leverage that. Some organizations need to have other avenues in order to get files in. So what we did, we have that experience layer. That's the only place things need to change. Those experience layers would then talk to the process layer. Think of that almost like an orchestrator or a conductor, right? So it was doing the logic to transform files into a consistent format, It was massaging, it was aggregating data from other systems, and then it was calling system APIs, which are really the direct connection to the back-end systems of record. And then that would obviously push it down to a baseline system where all of the analytics could be performed. So that's kind of how we structured it so that there wasn't as much constant change or needed change as things would go along. So the solution looked like this, right? So there was multiple different organizations, and some wanted us to go out and get the data. Some wanted to push it in via an email. Some wanted to use an FTP server, and other organizations were more modern and wanted to have a RESTful API that they could invoke. The nice thing is once we all got that into a consistent format, the process was consistent throughout. So it was a much more modern approach than a traditional SOA suite approach. Again, we had all the reusable assets, and that if there was ever another need to talk with point of sale systems, we already had all this infrastructure in place. The APIs were well defined, they were well documented, easy to understand, and it gave us both push and pull capabilities. So with that, kind of how we set that up, Mike, do you want to wrap up kind of how our client went through this life cycle?
Sure, Brandon, thanks. Well, just coming back to this digital evolution lifecycle graph, we really want to think about benefits in kind of twofold. One, so first, there's near-term benefits that our client was able to realize, which is really around doing a lot of the same things you were doing before, but doing more efficiently and productively. That's a good in and of itself. So for some of our clients, that means let's take an existing process and let's replicate that process digitally. And there can be process improvements, there can be security and timing improvements by doing just that. Whether it's, taking a paper process and making it digital, or using a process in a different platform and then using it with MuleSoft. But the long-term value, and where the clients who will receive that long-term value, where they're going to operate, is when they use that foundation to innovate. And the key question that we would ask is, does your platform approach allow you to innovate at the pace of business? Or does your platform cause you to stagnate? Is your platform setting you up for success, a launching pad? Or does it feel more constricted? Are you shackled by that platform? So this quote that we put in there really to help illustrate how you can cross that chasm between optimizing and innovating is it's really evolve or die. Really, you have to evolve and you have to move on, otherwise you become stagnant. So that's the key takeaway that I encourage you to think about as we wrap up this content. Thanks.